In a world both very far and very near to us all, a tale of grand import is unfolding. A tale where adventure lies just over the horizon, where good and evil do battle to determine the fate of the world, and where all is not what it may appear to be. Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and today it's time to continue the chronicles of a tale that is still being told about never-changing land. Sit back, relax, and listen as I tell you all about the living lore of the Duel Terminal. Episode 0, On Thin Ice. The land of Terminus is a barren place, where the inhabitants must struggle against two forces of nature, the bitter, eternal cold, and endless war. Long ago, when the tribes of the land were young, there was a cautious, tentative peace. Life was fragile, and betrayal was always a possibility. But in that cruel world, the only ones that the tribes could possibly trust in were each other. But before any formal agreements could be made, tragedy struck. From the Palakti tundra emerged 3 dragons, and with them a bitter cold blew over all of Terminus. So cold was it that even the sulfur fields of Ignium, a land possessed of the soul of fire, began to cool. And while the residents of the tundra could no more control these beasts than anyone else, the surrounding tribes had made up their minds. In a moment of weakness, they were betrayed and assailed by the dragon gods of the north, nearly wiping them out. They would not make the same mistake again. And so, for generations, the Flamvel, X-sabers, and Mist Valley honed their skills and forged their weapons, ready for the day they could bear the brunt of this foul winter and strike back against those traitors. But the years turned to decades, and decades turned to centuries, and over time, their fledgling bond faded away. In the cold, unforgiving landscape caused by the 3 dragons of ice, resources were scarce, and the only thing in shorter supply than food or shelter was charity. The tribes would come to blows almost as often as they crossed paths, and over time, their animosity became self-sustaining. War was no longer being waged to fight an injustice against a single tribe, it was being fought for each one's survival. Despite being the most equipped to handle this frigid apocalypse, the residents of the Palakti tundra were the most invested in finding a way to rid themselves of the ice dragon gods. And of them, it was their military that was the most desperate to do so. In the wake of the dragon's arrival, a cult had formed by those desperately seeking salvation, hoping to sate the dragon's fury to grant them reprieve. And as time went on, this cult grew into a fully fledged religion, worshipping the dragons as spirits of the land, punishing the people for turning away from their worship. Only with prayer and sacrifice would the dragons be appeased, but the more people and resources that were spent in this doomed endeavor to calm the dragons, the less the generals had to work with in their battle against the other tribes. And to make matters worse for the generals, their political power was swiftly waning. The Church of the Dragon Gods gave people hope. The military only gave them more failures. Something had to be done, and quickly. But while the 4 generals argued amongst themselves, a pilgrim from the Church of the Dragon God approached them with urgent news.
I have traveled this Rime-Frost world, and in my journeys I have discovered that though these dragons are strong, they are no gods. They hail from the winding canyons east of here, where a great ravine houses many more. They live alongside people of the wind, not unlike our enemies in the Mist Valley. But they have learned to tame the hearts of their dragons, and wish to help us bring balance to the world. Soon, the encroaching ice will envelop their home as well, so our goals are one and the same. But when I told the church, they branded me a heretic and cast me out. So now I turn to you. Will you men of war help me and the riders of dragons to bring calm to this eternal winter?
The generals held council, but did not need to discuss this for long. They had very few options at their disposal, and at the very least, it would be the dragon riders that would suffer the most from battling these ancient threats. And should they succeed, then they would be known as the saviors of the Palakti tundra. So Grunard, Gantala, Raiho, and Wayne gave their blessings and whatever soldiers they could spare, and departed to guide their guests and saviors through their icy lands. So, Together with the dragon riders, as well as this former prior of the Church of the Dragon Gods, preparations for the final battle that would determine the fate of Terminus began. While the three dragons of ice used the whole continent as their hunting ground, Palakdi was their nesting ground. And in their home, while the dragons were out hunting, the prior performed a ritual of their own devising, focused through a magic relic of their own forging, using techniques and knowledge they had accrued over their many years of travel. And while they waited for the dread worms to return, the dragon riders prepared their companions, resonating their hearts to form creatures of magnificent strength. But these preparations would not go unnoticed, for as the process of dragoonity reached its peak, the three dragons of ice crested the horizon, their eyes aglow with burning hatred. Intruders had made a mockery of their home, and feral retribution would be their reward. The ensuing battle was fierce. Many soldiers gave their lives to divide the dragons, hoping to limit their strength, and despite the cost, they succeeded. Eventually, each of the ice dragons would meet their equal in single combat. The mightiest of them all, known to the dragon riders as Trishula the Sub-Zero Terror, was met by Ascalon, a dragon that only appeared to the warriors of wind in their most desperate of hours. Gungnir the Destructive Glacier did battle against Arma Gram, a dragon that had itself the soul of a warrior and thus had no need for a rider to unlock its hidden potential. And finally, Brionac the Boreal Serpent was faced in battle by Eredvar, the champion of the dragon-riding arts of dragoonity. Though the battle was arduous, the avatars of cold could not stand against the burning hearts of the dragon knights, and all those who had lived too long under their icy gaze. One after the other, Trishula, Gungnir, and Brionac were thrown into the depths of the oubliette crafted by the prior, the Ice Barrier. It seemed like a fool's errand, sealing the dragons in a prison of their own element, but the prior had learned a precious truth in all his travels, what it was these dragons sought. For they seemed not to hunt for food, nor did they wish to acquire wealth. What was most dear to these dragons of ice was warmth. Within each living thing was a spark of fire, a heat that lasted even in the starkest cold, until that life was snuffed out. But these creatures had no such spark, and in its absence, the dragons grew to crave it. In fact, it is why they would leave this frozen land to sup upon the rays of light from the sun. But as creatures of ice, they could not risk such warmth melting them to the core, and thus, to the eternal winter they returned until their hunger grew anew. But now, sealed in a prison where not even the slightest hint of warmth remained, these dragons would remain dormant. But as with most feats of monumental import, there was a cost. The heatless seal could not be finished by a living creature, as their spark of warmth would ruin the spell. And so, the prior made the ultimate sacrifice, giving their life to the spell to enhance its power, and without his physical body, the spell could be complete. The prior's story, however, was not done, as this seal not only bound the dragons to their prison, but the prior's spirit to it as well. Regardless, he was content to know that the dragons of the Ice Barrier would no longer be a threat to his people. The Dragoonides, having finished their mission, paid their respects, then vanished, leaving little trace of their presence behind. The only proof they were ever there were the witnesses to this momentous battle and a small creature that would be taken home and adopted by various members of the church. As the Palakdi soldiers collected the prior's body, his spirit had one last message to return to the people of the northern tundra.
Heed my words, for I fear that this is not the last time the land of Terminus shall be beset by danger. Take my staff and enshrine it in the deepest chambers of the Cathedral of Eternal Frost, for the mirror atop it was the focus of my ritual. It is made of the purest permafrost, and is enchanted by the Dragoonides themselves, for they are the masters of dragons, and their spirit has served us well. Should ever there be a time where these dragons must be unsealed, have one with a just heart raise the mirror aloft and present it to the dragons. Mirrors are a reflection of the soul, and to reflect the dragon's feral nature back at them shall be anathema to them. They shall henceforth be our stewards. But take heed, for the mirror reflects the souls of both dragon and man, and should the greedy desire for power infect the mirror, the dragons will in turn become a reflection of our own sins, and ruin shall be brought upon us all.
With the dragons of the ice barrier sealed away, General Wayne proposed that they take measures to restore peace across the land, now that the threat looming over them all had been stopped. However, it was virulently rejected by the other generals. The weather was already starting to warm up for the rival tribes, and with it, their ability to wage war increased exponentially. Palakti had, up until now, the home field advantage, even in other territories. But now the Flamvel could make full use of their flickering embers, the Mist Valley could take to the skies without fear, and the heavy armor and weapons of the X-sabers would no longer need to push through heavy snowdrifts to be effective. But Wayne stood his ground. With more temperate climates surrounding them, food could be grown in more hospitable climates that they did not have access to. And with the right allegiances, the starving of the tundra could be cared for. It would even be a politically sound plan, as it would be the kind of change that the church could only dream of making. But the other generals would not budge. Gantala refused to show weakness in the face of the enemy. Raiho refused to let such naive hopes leave them vulnerable to sabotage. And while Grunard was the most shrewd of all the generals, and could see the possibilities of Wayne's suggestion, he would not trade the support of two of his peers for another's risky plan. So, when Wayne would not back down, the other three generals had Wayne sentenced to death on charges of conspiring to sell out the residents of Palakti to foreign powers. But Wayne would not be erased from the history books so easily. Despite Raiho's claims, Wayne was not a naive man, and combined with his skill as a fighter, when the opportunity presented itself, Wayne escaped, looking to find another place he could call home. The generals had proven that they were too wrapped up in royale politique to make decisions that were right for the people. But where would he go? The land of the Flamvel was far too hot for his liking, and he felt like he wouldn't belong among the feathered residents of the Mist Valley. Souza, the current head of the X-sabers, was a cruel and callous man, not at all the kind of person that Wayne would want to work under, but he had heard tell of a warrior amongst their ranks that was a true and noble soul. Perhaps with the right push from someone with experience in such things, this warrior could become their next leader, and guide their tribe into a new age of heroism and grace. The prior had been correct. In the following years, Terminus would face two more threats to its existence. The first was an intergalactic invasion by a species that would stop at nothing to consume all in its wake. A threat that finally managed to convince the tribes to put down their arms and work together as one. And the second, a group of demons from beyond the veil that orchestrated it all to gain ultimate power. With the worms wiped out and the tribes at their weakest, the fabled spread across the land to claim dominion over all things. And once again, the leadership of the Palakti Tundra had a choice to make. In the previous war, the former Church of the Dragon Gods, now reformed into the Order of the Ice Barrier, had released Brionac and Gungnir, using the power of the Ice Barrier Mirror to control them. But not even their freezing breath could stand in the way of the Fabled's magic. And so, the Order pushed to unseal the final and most powerful of the dragons, Trishula, to use its might and vanquish the Fabled. But the generals were none too pleased with this plan, as it appeared that history was repeating itself. Not only had the Order's effective usage of the previous two dragons against the worms been a crippling blow against the reputation of the military's ability to keep people safe, the generals were sure that, no matter who wielded the mirror, they would buckle under the might of Trishula, and the dragons would break free from their control and cause havoc the world over. This divide split the people of the Tundra in two, but despite the schism, the bond of two lifelong friends still held fast. One was Natalia, a member of the Order of the Ice Barrier who judged the character of those looking to join the inner circle, for it was her father that sealed away the dragons long ago, and she held his words in high regard. And while her father gave his life in that ritual, she also believed he would want the dragons to be free once again, as no creature deserved to be condemned forever in such a prison, and that they might atone for the crimes they had committed against the living. The other was Noellia, a mage in the employ of the Palakti military. She had followed in her parents' footsteps, for they served the nation proudly at the general's behest. In fact, her parents were one of many who joined the effort to seal the dragons away many years ago, and gave their lives during the mission to separate them. Noellia was already infuriated that the other two dragons had been unleashed. Seeing her parents' legacy, the sealing of the most dangerous creatures on Terminus being undone, was more painful than she could have ever possibly imagined. But because their lineages shared a common history, the two were raised together, despite being under the tutelage of different disciplines. And because of their long history, when many in the military and religious factions cut ties with each other, Noellia and Natalia resolved to find a new way to rid the world of the Fabled, to keep Palakti and its people from tearing each other apart. The two pooled their resources and after a few days did indeed come up with a plan. In the government's archives, Noellia discovered texts detailing a race of ancient demons that had been sealed away beneath the earth, put there by the weapons of the Constellars, the celestials that watched over and guarded the planet, and whom the Fabled themselves were descended from. These weapons, the divine automata known as the Vylon, made no tomb nor temple. The demons were simply sealed away, never to be seen again. But if they could be transported out, they could be set free. Now, in the face of the current invasion of the Fabled, a group of demons that turned traitor and demolished any chance of peace, summoning another horde of demons might seem foolhardy. But the Fabled had shown up out of nowhere and dictated the rules of engagement the entire time. They were able to roam free and do as they pleased. But here, that would not be the case. As the ones summoning the demons, Noellia and Natalia would be the ones to dictate terms to them, and these new demons, the Steelswarm, would be a new army they could use to eradicate the Fabled before returning them to their prison beneath the earth. To do this though, they would need a powerful magical artifact, and Natalia had access to just the right one, the Mirror of the Ice Barrier. While meant to control dragons, such magics could be molded by a skilled mage to work on other creatures too. And thankfully, Natalia and Noellia had two such skilled mages. Mirrors were also versatile objects. They were reflections of the soul, true, but they were also vessels of liminality, a space where the real travels into the reverse and back again. And such an esoteric experience expressed through an otherwise mundane object was an amazing catalyst for the magically inclined. And so, in the dead of night, the two slipped into the Cathedral of Eternal Frost to bring salvation to Terminus.
Are you sure you know your way around here?
For the last time, yes. I'm down here every day preparing for some raid or another. If anyone knows where we are, it's me.
Yeah, but that's when you've got sunlight coming through the ice. I can't even see my hand in front of my face.
Just trust me. I practically memorized the place. Look, we take a right here and... Shut up. If it's not right, it's left. Let's get going.
Are you sure we can't light a torch in here? It's so cold. I doubt one little fire is going to melt anything.
The ice isn't the problem. It's the guards. And we don't need them noticing us until we've started the ritual.
Ooh, guess that's the drawback of living in a place where all the buildings are made out of ice. You know, I went on a few missions for justice, and the other tribes make their buildings out of futuristic material, like rocks and wood and stuff.
Well, they didn't have to carve their homes out of the side of a glacier, now did they?
Well, the x-sabers might have. Those mountains go all the way up to the clouds, you know.
Yeah? Well, how about you get your head out of those clouds and back in the moment? We're here.
Whoa. So that's...
The mirror? Yeah. Beautiful, isn't it?
Huh? No. Sorry. That's what Trishula looks like.
Oh, yeah. For him, is my father's idea. Since Trishula was the strongest of the dragons, he hoped his visage would inspire fear in the other dragons. Oh, I'm so sorry. Can I have you place the glyphs?
Yeah. All right. That should do it. You ready?
Yeah. I even brought a few spare amulets in case we need a bit of a boost. You?
Sure am. I've double-checked the circle, and it looks good to go. Now remember, we're not opening up the full portal until we secure a pact. Until then, it's communication only.
Right. And we aren't promising anything?
Yeah, we get a freebie before we commit to anything. Once the higher-ups see that we've got them under control, they should be tripping over themselves to give us whatever we need to make that deal.
Okay, then, if you would do the honors.
Gladly. O mighty demons of the underworld, we demand thy audience, whose teeth and claws are that of steel. We call thee forth from the great beyond, to tear our foes asunder. Answer, and be given new life beyond your earthly prison.
Who dares to summon the swarm with such audacious commands?
My name doesn't matter here. We have come to strike a deal. Our land is in great danger, and you will rid us of it.
And what do we obtain in return?
Before we can offer anything, we need to see if you're up to the task. Have one of your minions form a pact with us, and if they can perform, we'll talk compensation.
As arrogant as we had anticipated. Sadly for you, we do not make deals. We shall be free shortly.
Oh, that's not likely. This portal isn't open long enough for you to come through. And if I see any funny business, I'm shutting it down.
It's far too late for that. Your mind is already ours to command.
Oh yeah, great bluff. But as you can see...
Noellia? Noellia, are you okay?
That's what you go by. Noellia. Be a dear and open the portal for us. Your new family would like to come and say hello to all your little friends.
Noellia began to sink her energy into the portal, causing it to grow and expand, her consciousness having been tucked away in a distant corner of her own mind. For the knowledge of what made these demons of old so powerful had been lost to time. Not even these ancient texts knew that answer, but the Steelswarm's most powerful weapon was their corruptive influence. A magic that was even stronger than the fabled, for only they could twist the emotions of their targets. The Steelswarm could bend the minds of their victims to their whim, and Noellia was their latest quarry. Natalia tried to counteract this, but it wasn't working. The possessors were working through Noellia, and they puppeteered her into feeding the portal. And as each second passed, Natalia could see her friend's body being eaten away, her body being consumed by the spell to make it stronger. In a desperate bid to save them both, Natalia drew her blade and struck the spell circle, seeking to disrupt the ritual as quickly and completely as possible. And with one stroke of the blade, it was done. But like her father before her, the cost must be paid. The backlash of the failed ritual caused a massive explosion, with the two friends at its center. But as they regained their senses, they could see it was only fatal for one of them. Natalia bore the brunt of the punishment, her body lying crumpled on the ground.
Natalia. Please be okay.
Noellia, are you okay now?
Yes, I don't know what came over me. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.
Of course I forgive you. I know you would never do something like that. You're a truly brave and honest soul.
Don't say that. It was my idea to summon demons to fight demons. I never should have said anything.
But you did it to protect our people. Protect the whole world. You know, if we ever did unseal Trisha, it may seem cruel, but I would have wanted you to do it.
Why? Why would you have me do that? God, you know I hate that thing. It took everything from me.
Still, I know you have the strength of heart to do what must be done. If it was to save us, I know you would be the one to tame it.
Natalia.
Noellia, I have a request for you.
Yes, anything you want.
My son, Avance, please look after him. When I pass, he will have no family left.
Of course. I'll raise him as my own.
Thank you. You know, I'm gonna miss seeing the fine man he grows up to be. In the world we would have made.
But Noellia would not have time to grieve. The cathedral guards were already on their way, and carrying Natalia out would slow her down too much. The Order would have to attend to the burial rites. Noellia fled the cathedral and made for her home as fast as she could. In the morning, the news was everywhere. A member of the Order of the Ice Barrier found dead in the deepest parts of the most holy building in the entire country. The accusations began immediately. The Order demanded to know why the military had killed one of their own in cold blood, but was countered by claims that this was all a setup. How would a member of the military get so far into the cathedral without alerting anyone? But then that was countered by the fact that a prominent mage of the military had gone missing with her daughter and the son of the murdered cleric. Noellia hadn't waited for the rumors to spread. She packed up her things, grabbed her own daughter Amelia and Natalia's son Avance, and fled. Fled as far away from the war as possible. And none too soon. Shortly after, the Jurax went out in a blaze of glory, wiping out many of the fabled in the process. But that didn't stop the surviving ones from striking out across Terminus and laying claims to domains across the land. This was the final straw, and despite the military prohibiting its use, the Order used the mirror to rid the land of the fabled once and for all by unsealing mighty Trishula. But it would also wipe out all life in these tribes as well. Maybe the wielder of the mirror was not pure of heart, and thus could not use it properly. Perhaps the Steelswarm ritual had tainted its power, causing Trishula to go mad. Or maybe the years in isolation had sent it into a feral rage that no one could have ever hoped to quell. But no matter the reason, the land this story had taken place in for so long was covered in a blizzard even stronger and deadlier than when the three dragons first roamed the earth, and thus ended the story of Age 1.0. Noellia would not be the only one to flee the disaster of Trishula. Many refugees fled Palakti for safer lands, and as she traveled, Noellia came across another orphan of the ice barriers, Ariel, whom Noellia also adopted. And once the found family emerged from the Dragon Ravine, on the other side they found the Gustos, a peaceful tribe of marsh dwellers who gladly accepted all those who sought a new home after their old one was destroyed. For years, Noellia built a new home with a new family, with Amelia, Avance, and Ariel trying to do right by them and Natalia's wishes. But every once in a while, Noellia would get this nagging thought in the back of her head, like she had forgotten something back home that she simply must get back. But what could have been so important that she would have to leave her family and travel the frozen wasteland to do it? Some nights, she'd find herself standing outside her house without any recollection of ever getting out of bed, as if she was ready to go on a long journey. This troubled both herself and the village, so with some babysitting help from the Gustos, Noellia made the dangerous trek back through the Dragon Ravine in an attempt to find out what was wrong. And as she traveled, the reason began to crystallize. Natalia had wanted to see a new world, made by their hands. One where their children could run free, worrying not that a world-ending crisis or bickering tribal leaders would throw their lives into chaos. And she had failed in that. Instead of standing her ground and finding a way to make things right, she ran. And their entire homeland, all of Terminus, suffered for it. How could Noellia live with herself, knowing she had failed Natalia's, her dearest friend's, last wish? Something had to be done. Something must be done. Half a corpse drags itself into a collapsed chamber. Everything from the waist down was missing. The only thing propelling it forward was a working arm, magic, and a bottomless pit of spite. After having barely survived the Jurak meteor impact, fabled Valkyries clawed their way across the world, looking for something, anything, to reconstruct their broken body. Not even the cold of Trishula could freeze Valkyries' burning hatred. After all, how could he not be upset? His plan to rule all of Terminus was going so well, and soon, with that entire world at his back, even the fabled realm would be at his beck and call. Gone because of some impudent lizards who didn't know their place. But now, all these years of crawling through this icy hellscape would be worth it, for in this chamber was the only magical artifact that seemed to have the power he needed. So he reached out and grasped the mirror of the ice barrier. But as Valkyries held his prize close to his chest, another encroached upon this reunion.
You must be one of those witches from back when the ice barrier was still intact. How's that going for you, by the way? Not much of a talker, huh? Doesn't matter. Now that I have this mirror, I'll take great pleasure in dragging out every scream of pain from your lungs. Every mortal will taste my
It's
revenge.
shaped like Trishilla, you know.
What?
The frame. Natalia said it was to instill fear in the dragons. Didn't seem to do anything to Trishilla, but worked just fine on the other two.
Again, pardon?
I mean, I get it. Being sealed away for so many years, having everything you have ever loved taken away from you. At that point, fear doesn't really mean anything.
Alright, this isn't going anywhere. If you're just going to ramble, I'd rather just kill you now.
But after all that, all the pain and the loss and suffering, I have something. Something that you, or Trishilla, or any of the worms don't have. You want to know what it is?
What?
A future. And I'm not going to let anyone stop me from shaping it.
Noellia, good to see you again.
Quiet. I didn't come here for the small talk.
Of course. Actions speak louder than words after all. So, how can we be of assistance?
That's more like it. No. It's time to make some changes.
All right, and that is a wrap on the intermission of the living lore of the Duel Terminal. Thank you all so much for being patient on this. I know a lot of you were really looking forward to the next chapter of this story. We're getting into Age 2.0 where things really start to ramp up. Part of the reason why it took me so long to get this out is because it was important to me to make that little segment at the beginning. I had this idea of a kind of parallel narrative to tie together some things in the background. Part of the issue that I find with a lot of these stories is that things tend to come out of nowhere, so I wanted to create some kind of way to give lead up to this kind of stuff, and unfortunately there's not a lot in the card art that provides for it, so I was stuck for a while just trying to figure out how I would accomplish this, and thankfully someone came along that really helped with that one. Big thank you to the editor of this Epinode. Big thanks to the editor of this episode, Emony-Chan, who reached out and they asked if I needed an editor, and I'm like, yeah, I've got this interesting project going on. Do you know if you could work on this? And she with aplomb was like, this is really cool. I want to help out with this, and boy howdy, I feel like she delivered. I love the intro sequence so much, and the all the effort that she put into making the core of the episode that much better. There's a lot more dynamism in the slides. Unfortunately, we can't work with real animation right now, but she did an excellent job of using what was available and adjusting what was already there. When I saw the the damaged Valkyrus portrait, I flew out of my seat. It was so gruesome. I loved it. So big credits go to Emony-Chan for all of her work on this episode. I also want to thank all of the voice actors who helped bring to life some of these characters. A lot of you really enjoyed previous episodes where Gotham's and Grisham, the Thunderlord, were voiced, and I can only do so much by myself. There's only so many filters on Audacity that I can tweak to make different voices, so I wanted to give a big thank you to Hardleg Joe, who played the Prior/Spirit of the Ice Barrier. I couldn't think of anyone more suited to the role of a wizened old mystic than the Hardest of Legs, so big thank you to him. I also want to thank Eva Lees for voicing Natalia in this episode. There was a lot that needed to go into that character. Natalia doesn't stick around in a corporeal form for very long, but her presence is felt a lot in the future, and she's introduced and effectively removed from the story very quickly. Not even before, in the middle of all of the events that go on in Age 1.0, so I needed someone that had a lot of heart, that could impart this kind of somber message to her friend, and Eva fit the part beautifully. Thank you so much. I also want to thank Darcy Davies for voicing Noellia. That is a character that needed to be very carefully selected because Noellia does stick around for quite a while and is It is kind of the direct cause for a lot of stuff that happens in 2.0, so I had to pick a really good voice actress. And Darcy, once again, has this really great range of being playful to show like a pre-Steelswarm version, and really hit it out of the park with the like cold, unaffected, authoritative character that comes after she's become jaded, and now she has to start doing some really horrible stuff, which all of you are going to see in Age 2.0. And another group of people that I just could not have done really any of this without are all of my lovely patrons. So I'd like to take a moment to thank all of you directly. Quasar Commander, Green Knight, Nebula Navigators, Third Dynasty, Adam Zajdel, Andrew Newman, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Cameron Berg, Chibi Gohan, Colin Todd, Eric, Frankie, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Ironic, Iskander 711, Jester Designs, John Manji, Jordan, Julius Sneezer, Mana Charge, Marluxia is a Girl, Meteornus, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Rem T Bright, RJ the Jank Monarch, Ruxith Sarani, Sammy Haim, Sophie, apparently, the Charizard Flame, the Fresh Prince of Conair, the Wizard Moose, and Xander Wolfensberger, Cosmic Crusaders Ariel Kersey, Bear Sharktopus Studios, Chaz Ghost, Chris Kessler, Corbinisms, Danny Bound, Drachenwald, Emony, Eva Padilla, Gatorade, H2O, Gatorade, H2O, Johnny sucks. He really, really sucks. I'm gonna remove Noah Jenk from this world myself one day. Haro, Herbal D, Jesus Garcia, Kale the Dragon, Carp, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-De-Doo, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Picata, Matt Simmons, Neo Trinity, Nitromo, Shooting Star 3300, Star-Lord 777, Super Purd, Tucker Ordorn, and the Legendary Raven, as well as all the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. Once again, it does mean the absolute world to me that you all have stuck around to believe in me, not just with your views, but by actively participating in my ability to make this my job. YouTube ad revenue can be fickle at the best of times, so having all of you believing enough in me to throw in a few dollars to me every month really does add a level of stability that I otherwise just would not have. So once again, thanks again to you. Thanks again to Emony. Thanks to Hardleg. Thanks to Eva. And thanks to Darcy. It really means everything. I love making these lore episodes. Thank you all so much for watching, and here's looking forward to when episode 5 drops in 2025. Take care.